Namaste. Assalamu alaikum. Shalom. Iha, buenos dias, Sevache, Aquaba, welcome, what up, though? This is Cafe Melange, week numero 24. And I think, again, it's about that way. Maybe 25. Either way, it is what it is today. Um, and the topic for the talk today is on the beast, the system, the man, and the way. However, before getting into that, I have some afterthought preface and an afterthought preface from the previous week. In the previous week, the topic is basically Melange, wisdom and righteousness, focusing on, if I recall correctly, songs and stories and rituals and ethics, righteousness. Um, and there's some things that I consider including uh, in the previous joint a week ago that I'm saying from including just because I would abstain from working too much from notes a week ago or all the notes. So some thoughts, sure. And I have notes on that briefly, and then today's topic. And actually, before I do that, I share this. I visit the Office of Multicultural Affairs. I can't say that. Just minutes ago, hours ago, an hour ago or so, and there is a display of at the front of the Bill of Rights for people of mixed heritage. So that's appreciated. So that's a positive thing to begin on. Maybe I should have concluded with that. Maybe I will anyways. Anyways, so there's that. Now, in terms of the afterthought preface for today, on the topic of knowledge, righteousness, wisdom, and righteousness, um, I mentioned the notion of patience, the formula for patience being still, being quiet, and being honest, and that being the foundation of all benevolent things, all blessings in this life, trust, understanding, forgiveness, love, all that. It begins with patience. So there's that. But and then from that we have the rituals, the discipline, prayers, meditation, yoga, reflection, study. Uh, all the things that strengthen us, being doing that on a regular basis to prepare us for the challenges and the blessings that we encounter during each day. Um, then a few thoughts from extending from that. Many people talk about songs. Many people talk about stories and storytelling, and that's beneficial. But it's also beneficial to recognize what is healthy, what are healthy songs and healthy storytelling, what is unhealthy and songs and storytelling. And the considerations of recognizing the effect, understanding the message, understanding the effect of the songs and stories, and how uh, many of the songs and stories can be intoxicating. It's like food. Not all food is healthy, and so not all culture is healthy either. Um, I'm getting a prompt to show that I am not a robot, but that seems to be something else. All right. So not all stories and not all songs are healthy. And if we look at a lot of the pop culture these days, again, it's the same thing: salt, sugar, um, fat, pretty faces, special effects, extravagant storylines, this and the other, that are very sensationalized and give us certain sense of self, particularly when we are able to tell these and be the first one to see it and share this with our circles. But in terms of telling us who we are, what we are in this life, where we're going, how to go there, how to get there, it shares very little. And so it's like fast food. It's like unhealthy food. So the consideration is healthy stories, healthy songs, and those are we can find those amongst our ancient stories and our ancient stories because there's a reason why they continue to exist, even if they They ain't the most uh, flashy, uh, wholesome. And they're the stories that we can share with our elders. They're stories that we should, and stories and songs that we can share with our elders. Stories and songs that we can share with our children. And additionally, so it's a matter of finding what those are, recognizing what those are, learning what those are, sharing what those are, teaching what those are. It's a beautiful thing. So that's one thing to consider. What are the stories that you know that are over 100 years old, that are over a couple hundred years old? What are the songs that you know how to sing by heart that are 100 years old or over? That's where strength of community, village, family, individual is found. That's what Confucius teaches. That's what Socrates teaches. That's what our prophets, our ancestors, and our sages teach us. So it's a matter of rediscovering and reappreciating those stories and songs. And for those who are less inclined immediately towards rituals, building with the rituals as is optimal. Um, and being encouraged and strengthened within the righteousness that is taught through these stories, songs, and rituals. All right. Then further in the aspect of righteousness and ethical discipline when it comes to economics, um, there's the credo of divest, invest, and co-vest, meaning divest from the things that are harmful, recognizing the things that are harmful, whether that's oppressive labor, sweatshop factories, slave labor, undue burdens, migrant working labor, detrimental to environment, harmful for the the soil, the water, the air, the animals, all those things. That's part of who we are, and that's part of the health of who we are. So, identifying what those harmful things are, and then divesting from them. Like stop buying, stop consuming it, stop like investing, and then with that, then invest in the things that are healthy. It may not be as tasty or whatever else, again, as flashy, but are healthy and strengthen us. Investing in those, buying those, and it may cost more. Yeah, organic is way high price, but fair trade way high price. But it, it's much less of a price when we spread it along a lifetime, a long healthy lifetime. That results in less medical bills towards the end of life. So that's the invest. And then co-vest is a matter of finding who else is doing this and starting up co-ops, buying in bulk, utilizing modest economies of scale to account for the cost differential and to have greater leverage in purchasing and bargaining and pricing in addition. So co-vesting with those who share the same inclination. So um, that continues towards the next stage of building cooperatives and being increasingly intentional and organized and intelligent in how we consume things, how we our economics. That's food and supplies, that's residences, that's transportation, education, and additionally, controversial. So all that cooperatives and getting a sense of self from these cooperatives. Now, rather than getting a sense of self from a brand label and being perceived as elitist or rich or whatever else, and sophisticated or whatever else we get from the brand names and the marketing and everything. Getting a sense of self of wholeness and well-being from things that we consume. The fact that like we're connected with the people who are uh, planting the seeds and pulling the crops from the earth, making the clothing, and additionally, getting a sense of self and well-being, and like if you want to have pride, a sense of pride from that immediacy, that connection, that wellness, that righteousness. How about that? So um, that's that cooperatives, and then from the cooperatives, building and strengthening uh, institutions of cooperation, systems of cooperation, and infrastructure of cooperation. Um, Federations, in addition, village to village cooperatives, village to village federations, even, and systems of exchange where we share the talents, the capabilities, the materials that are given within our stewardship to share with those who have complementary talents and capabilities and materials. Uh, to share. So those are some of like the afterthoughts from the previous joint. Um, as a way of strengthening our foundation, our practice, our experience, our well-being of Melange wisdom and righteousness on this earth that we share with all. So that being said, we get into haha, the beast, the system, the man, and the way. So, and to be honest, didn't write no notes on this joint, and also haven't thought exactly what to share in this joint either. So, kind of riffing, but uh, it's after a considerable amount of preparation through the years. So here it is, the beast. So what do we mean by beast? What is the beast? So the boogeyman. How about that? Another way of saying it. Uh, all the things, all the nasty, the evil, the devil, um, all the wrong, just everything that's bad. The beast. That's the beast. So some people talk about Shaitan. Some people talk about um, Lucifer. Some people talk about this and the other. All the bad. All the bad. Um, the Antichrist. All the bad. Mara. All the bad. Whatever that is, all the bad. That's the beast. And obviously the beast is a limited term. Whatever there's an absence of an absolute term that encapsulates all that nasty stuff. But that's what the beast is. So um, then it's a matter of understanding what the nature of the beast is. Many people in many traditions personify the beast, like I said, describing the beast as devil, as an evil person, incarnate, or what have you, or what have us. Um, so those are some ways of understanding. Um, and I'm sharing another way that doesn't necessarily disagree or uh, denounce that type of perception, but it shares another way of perceiving the beast. That's actually um, coincides. It exists within conjunction with the other precepts, but or the other perceptions. So this is one way I describe the beast. It's what the Buddha teaches is greed, hatred, and delusion. It's beyond a personification. It is uh, it is a phenomenon, and it has the propensity of afflicting any and everyone. Um, and whenever it is perceived or evidenced within an individual, that ain't the whole of it. And there is an absence of any individual that is the epitome or the exclusivity of the beast. That's the nature of the beast exists beyond any one individual um, and personification. And it can be formidable in terms of like a huge monster military annihilation type joint. Uh, uh, Atomic bomb type joint, nuclear type joint. It can be as soft and quiet as a whisper, um, and obscure and confusing, enticing, and that's often what it is: intoxicating, indulgent, uh, tempting. So the nature of the beast is all those things that cause uh, individuals, sentient beings, to cause harm. And the Buddha sums it up as greed, hatred, and delusion. Another way of like describing it is one metaphor or example that I use to describe it is drawing from haha, a contemporary film. And here I go, seemingly contradicting myself. I like films, and um, I'm a film advocate for many years of my life. these days I learn better, and I focus on storytelling. Like I mentioned, it's not an either or. Um, so many of my frames of reference are films that I've seen in the past. So you can call me out. Anybody who wants to call me contradictory, cool. There's a difference between hypocrite and contradictory. But anyways, that being said, the reference that I have is a film. It was The Happening, I think it was called. It was an M. Night Shyamalan film after The Sixth Sense. And in the film, basically, it shows that it's like a thriller, like a suspense thriller type thing. But basically, there was a disease that afflicted humanity, and it was inexplainable. And it would come out of nowhere, and it would make people do insane things until dying and taking others with them. And so it was difficult to like determine like when it's going to come, who is it going to affect, and the consequences were fatal. And so people were terrified and didn't trust each other, even whether the person had others had it or not, because they didn't know. And so eventually, if as I recall correctly, it was described how the trees were actually the ones causing the disease, and it was like spread through something like the pollen or something like that. It was in the air. It was an airborne kind of disease, but it had a certain sentience that the hint was. So, but the point is that it kind of like went with the wind, um, and that's how it affected people. And so, but throughout the film, the way it's shown, right, the way the disease, the beast is shown, is just like looking in the air and seeing the trees like blowing in the breeze, and it seems like an innocent thing. Like, what's so scary about that? But it's recognizing like what's actually happening that you can't see, and the consequences that come from that. So that's what the beast is like. Um, it's like invisible. It's like it can be here 1 second and gone the next second, and it's very difficult to detect. And just because you see somebody behaving in a certain way, doesn't mean it is the way. And just because you see somebody behaving like in a nasty way, be careful about making conclusions. And just because you see somebody acting in a nice way, let's be careful about making conclusions. So um, that's the nature of the beast. It can be very formidable and like right in the face, but it also can be very subtle. And it's in the ether. And so again, a way of making it increasingly understandable, palpable, tangible, perceivable is looking at like the characteristics of greed, hatred, and delusion, and the things that cause people to cause harm towards others, and recognizing that within ourselves, and doing our best to keep that at a distance from ourselves. And when we do that, then we're better able to evidence the presence and the lack thereof of such greed, hatred, and delusion within others, and better able to evidence and encourage the modesty, love, and truth within others. Um, so that's part of the description about the nature of the beast. So when we talk about corporate oppression, when we talk about national occupation and affliction and warfare, um, and when we talk about sexual exploitation, when we talk about human trafficking, when we talk about child abuse, when we talk about all the nasty stuff, these are manifestations of the beast um, through general practices of greed, hatred, and delusion. So that understood or that recognized or that being communicated, we get into the system because many people who see the affliction that people are experiencing or that sentience is experiencing within this earth, within this universe, and who study it and have a certain understanding of it, and how pervasive it is and how regularized or normalized it is. Talk about the system, how the system perpetuates it. The system is doing this, the system is doing that. And the system also intrinsically includes in that conversation institutions, whether it's organized religion, whether it's organized corporations, whether it's organized government, whether it's organized uh, academia. And additionally, it's all perceived as part of the system. And so there's accuracy within that assessment, but that is other than the extent of the causal relationship. And by that I mean that's other than where it begins, and that's other where it ends. And so it's an easily identifiable target. It's a most difficultly addressed target, or a difficultly changed target. Um, Yet before even getting to that point, or amidst getting to that point, it's a matter of understanding the nature of it. So, in my experience, many idealists kind of uh, idealize uh, political ideology. That's a lot of ideas there. So basically, what I'm saying is that many people who have an interest in addressing the affliction and healing the system, healing people who are affected by the system, have an idea of what's perfect, a utopian idea, and want to maintain the integrity and the purity of that political ideology. Um, and that has a tendency of uh, categorically condemning the system, because there's a recognition of the system being um, fundamentally corrupt, fundamentally selfish, greedy, hateful, delusional, or what have you, or what have us. And whilst the logic may be clear in that assessment, the actuality, the pragmatism within that, and the recognition of one's envelopment within that tends to be less readily recognized and addressed. So my point with all this is that um, understanding the nature of systems, consideration of maybe we would have helped to have notes. We work with what we got. Understanding the nature of the system, understanding that organizations and organizing is a part of human nature, is part of sentient nature to different degrees of intensity. Um, so there is a Benedictine monk whose name is Brother David Steindl-Rast, who says that about when he talks about religion, he says that um, organized religion by nature is self-serving. Um, it's a necessary thing to perpetuate the teachings of righteousness and well-being of the religion and amongst the practitioners of the religion, but as transcendent as those teachings are, the purpose of the religious organization is to continue itself, and so there are limits in the actuality of its practice, and so that goes with every organization, with every human sentient organization, temporal organization. There are limits that in its efficacy, in it adhering to the principles and the ideology that it um, uh, that it espouses, or that it believes in, that it promotes, that it adheres to. So it's just a matter of recognizing that, regardless of whether it's communism, capitalism, socialism, democracy, uh, whatever, there's limits. So a lesson to draw from that is tempering the expectation and being increasingly modest in the expectation and then in the implementation of, of the cooperation. So when we find things, the teachings that are righteous, that resonate with ourselves, and we want to cooperate, we want to divest, invest, co-vest, and then cooperate, and then build institution systems. Um, it's a matter of being mindful of the principle and the ideology, and then being mindful of the pragmatism, and continually working diligently to optimize the pragmatism towards the ideology, recognizing that the pragmatism always is um, in that process of reaching towards the ideology. And that provides us with additional flexibility, forgiveness, understanding, empathy, and cooperating with each other. And that's what Lao Tzu teaches within the Tao Te Ching, having that flexibility. That's the water, that's the nature of the shui. It's a matter of being rooted and firm within our roots and being strong and firm, then also having that softness, having the pliability, having the ability to compromise in inappropriate situations, and listen to the wind and be able to bend like the branches in order to maintain the integrity of the entirety of the tree. So that's what systems facilitate, and that's a wise approach towards being in system, and cultivating system. It may start getting loud now. So that's system. Um, and yes, systems do some bad things. Institutions and systems do some bad things. So um, we have to account for that and do our best amidst those conditions. So it's a little bit of a tempering, but there it is. Now, going to the man. Um, Again, when we talk about the beast and like the heinous things that are going on, and we talk about systemic oppression and affliction, and additionally, we often talk about the man as well. And so the man is a way of personifying, in a temporal sense, in an increasingly immediate sense than the beast, and an increasingly tribal or religious sense than just some ambiguous system or personless system. We say the man because now the man has a face. The oppression has a face, and the villain can be seen in some sense. So uh, again, we can find greed, hatred, delusion in anybody. We can evidence that within anybody, and we can vilify the other as much as possible, or as much as we have the self-indulgence of doing. The consideration is, um, how accurate is that, and then how beneficial is that, particularly in the long run. And that mindset, that binary of us versus them, and those are the bad people, these are the beneficial people, is an ancient practice. Just because it's ancient doesn't mean it's right. Um, and as ancient as it is increasingly difficult to do these days, because people are increasingly knowledgeable about each other, and about the backgrounds of each other, um, and less susceptible to the uh, the binary of antagonism, of categorical antagonism towards an entirety of a people, as any man. Um, there are additional details to consider within this notion of vilifying. We can look at examples of the scapegoat. Um, we can look at um, other methodologies of labeling another entity as enemy and then giving condonement of afflicting the enemy, rationalizing that affliction based upon the labeling. Um, but like I said, the nature of the earth, the nature of humanity, the nature of sentience on this earth is becoming increasingly knowledgeable, and those methodologies are increasingly antiquated. For example, when we look at the example of the scapegoat, um, it's built within. It comes from Torah, and it comes from other traditions as well, but it's specifically within Torah. Um, it's based upon a notion of a home base, a camp, and an outside, a wilderness, and an us and a them. And that's something that is held within many of the different traditions of the earth. Meaning that there's something that exists within the finite geography of our dwelling place, and then there's the things that exist outside, the foreigners. But at this point, within the collective sentience and consciousness of humanoids, it's all the earth, and we have boundaries. We have these political borders, and additionally that are established. But we also recognize in postmodern society that we're all part of the same earth. And so that notion of an outer limit where we can cast our mysteries, our undisclosed, our unsolved kind of ideas, our undisclosed kind of our undefined um, or unanswered questions, the boogeyman, and additionally, ain't got another land to put it on because we've walked all the lands collectively. There's an absence of some ambiguous amorphic place geographically to cast the goat, and so it's a matter of us being reconciled with ourselves, and rather than blaming or pointing fingers at an entire category of persons and calling any leadership within that group the man and blaming the man for that. It's a matter of becoming increasingly honest and like knowledgeable and even sophisticated in understanding the nature of affliction, and then even particularly our contribution to that, and then doing something better about it. Um, so that goes for all people: black, white, yellow, red, brown, orange. That's a lot of it right there. All people. Um, so quasi, somewhat. That's a joint with the man for the moment. Um, so then we get into the way, and the way is what I've been describing through this joint in each of the stages. When I say understanding the nature, um, and that's part of understanding the way. The way is just the way things are, whether we like it or not, whether we agree with it or not, or whatever. It's understanding the nature of things, um, and it's like gravity, it's like light, it's like the elements. We can argue it. It is what it is, and our understanding of it might evolve. Like what we understand as gravity today might be different 1,000 years from now. But for the moment, why argue about gravity? You can say, oh, the planes fly, rockets go in the air, birds fly. What do you mean gravity? There's no such thing as gravity. Okay. That could be understood as the nature of it. But anyways, my point is that when we look towards things that are increasingly debatable, politics, economics, what's a fair price, uh, what is a fair methodology of distribution of materials within a society, what's the fair and righteous way of a group making decisions, what's that process. Um, it's a matter of understanding nature, and part of understanding nature is understanding cause and effect. And just saying, well, we could do it this way, but then we can expect this to happen. We can do it that way, then we can expect that to happen. Um, and then we can identify what we consider to be increasingly favorable according to what we identify as increasingly healthy. And that is attributable to our material nature. So, all right, how are you doing? Cool. So if our nature is hot and humid, then our decisions can be understood in that context and towards that context. If our nature is cold and dry, again, our, our understanding of our decisions and our consequences can be understood towards that extent. Um, if our nature is high and cloudy, if our nature is if our nature is submarine and clear, then we can understand our decisions and the cause and effect towards that way. And when we try implementing or imposing a high and clear methodology and nature amidst cold and dry circumstances or hot and humid circumstances, that we can recognize the dissonance that emerges accordingly. And when we live in a climate that is fluctuates from season to season, from year to year, uh, again, it's a matter of understanding the nature of that. So, politics, economics, religiosity, all that can be understood in appropriate context and uh, identified into the cause and effect, um, and then the ultimately the experience of harmony and well-being, and that harmony, the way things are, that's the way. Um, uh, and our decisions, our dispositions, in economics, politics, religiosity, and additionally, simply conform with that way. Again, Lao Tzu talks about it as Tao. We can understand it as the will of Allah. We can understand that as Nezut Hashem. We can understand that as Brahman. We can understand that as all of that. The way. So the great mystery. So when we're increasingly honest, when we have that patience, the stillness, the quiet, and the honesty, and we observe, because that's what happens when we are still, quiet, and honest, we observe. We become increasingly mindful of the conditions around us, the cause and effect, and the nature, the way of things, and then our place within these things, our place within the way. That's where we find our well-being. That's where we find our harmony. Um, Beyond all the systems, beyond all the men, beyond all the beast, it's the way. And it's beyond anybody's individual control. It's beyond anybody's individual will or word. Um, all that is simply a part of it. So um, there's a certain amount of confidence, strength, peace that comes with the way. It ain't always easy. It ain't always pretty. It's beautiful, um, and it's worth it. It's enduring because it's the way. So, anyways, that's the joint for this moment. Um, that's much of it. I try to think of like pragmatics because I think in the previous joint I've seen from like delving too much into like details in terms of like how to practice that righteousness. And additionally, that might be topic for another convo. I think I've been at this for maybe 45 to 50 minutes, 40 minutes. So um, there it is. Namaste, assalamu alaikum, shalom, zajin, adios, teja luz, sapina, samu, kele, love, and peace.